Welcome back to part number 10, where I'm making the thorns, because what's a blackberry plant without some thorns? And here you can see me with my pencil drawing the rough outline of the thorns onto the silk. And now I'm taking some silk thread. I use some of the very thick silk thread that you normally use for buttonholes, because that glides through the silk very easily. So I thought I would take advantage of that. Also, it had just the right shade of brown that it would match with the blackberry stems. By the way, I'm doing this all in twice the actual speed, so we can get through this a little faster. I'm doing this a little different from the leaves. Remember when I was doing the leaves, I expressively said not to spiral the silk ribbon through the silk base fabric, because then it would get too bulky. I'm doing the exact opposite here because I want that bulky effect for the thorns. It's okay if they're a little rounded because actual thorns are rounded too, and I really like the effect with the slightly shimmering silk. It's really nice. The one thing to keep in mind with this, though, as always, to make sure that the lines you drew with a pencil are within the embroidery, and also that, despite the fact that this is kind of difficult, your thorns have to be somewhat straight around the edges, because otherwise they're going to look all weird. So that basically means you don't have to stay within the lines you drew, but you definitely have to adhere to the lines and try to follow them anyway. And I think we're reaching the point where I tangled my threads, so that has to be remedied. Now just watching me pull on my threads very roughly made me remember the one thing doing this type of stitch, I think this is pretty much satin stitch, is that you need to be very aware of the tension you put on the thread while pulling on it, because you see it gets this kind of rounded squishy structure, this thorn, and if at some point you pull on the thread really hard, then it pulls in one or two of the stitches you made, but not the rest, and then it's going to look terrible. So be aware of the tension you have on the thread. It's really important. It doesn't look even otherwise. Okay, let me see, what else can I tell you. This is not the only way to embroider thorns. I tried a couple of different things, but in the end I picked this one because I felt like it looked the best with the overall embroidery, so I had to take that into consideration. The first thing I tried was making somewhat of a V shape and then kind of making more and more stitches, so that's like lots of little V letters inside one another, and that looked kind of weird, so I didn't go with that in the end. What I also liked was the idea of metal spikes, you know, like those very metal or goth people wear, mostly because I like the idea of the whole thing looking a bit more, yeah, I would say crass or drastic, a bit more like the Blackberry can actually defend itself, because I really liked that about Marjorie Tyrell's wedding dress in Game of Thrones in the TV show, that she had these little metal spikes in between, or the pretty little roses. I thought that was really neat. I really liked that dress, not the overall design, but like the idea behind it. But yeah, that didn't work either, because actual spikes didn't really work with this whole silk thing, and I couldn't find any beads in spike shape or anything like that. I considered sequins for a second, but yeah, it wasn't such a good idea, so I didn't. That would have looked so tacky though. Oh, I totally dropped the ball explaining what I'm doing. So I went back to the back side, pulled the thread through the thorn I had sewn, and then I made a knot, and then I pulled it back through the thorn. Ugh, that's terrible to pronounce, especially for someone with a lisp. So this is it for this one. Just do a lot of thorns and you're good, just as many as you like, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, take care, try to stay healthy.